Hi, Kev here, Tabletop Upgrades, and a massive update for Decline. Probably the biggest update I've done in 2 years. I've really got my mojo back and making massive progress. Look, here's the rule book, which is pretty much a functioning rule set now. So in this video, I'm going to update you on 3 aspects of the game. The first being the physical changes that I've made to make it a lot easier and a lot more playable. The second is the storytelling aspect. And finally, I'm going to give you a quick run through of some of the rules, because next week I'll be putting out the first couple of adventures along with the rule sets for you guys to download and try. So this is going to be a little preview in this video. So when I started this game 2 years ago, I started it with a deck of cards and you create a map in a 3x3 grid, and I quickly found that didn't work out because actually you don't get that many variations. So I'm going to show you how that's evolved over the past couple of weeks. So in the previous edition, you draw a number of cards and there was different designs, and I was quite happy with the artwork. You put them together, but it'd be very difficult to actually make a functioning map because, you know, a river can't go into this wasteland. The graveyard is now not appropriate for its surroundings, the 2 roads. So the true random nature never really came to fruition. So I ended up having this rather complex system whereby I gave each card a number and then you had to make grid layouts, and it was an awful lot of admin just to get a playable map. And there was probably, out of this deck of cards, maybe about 5 maps that were workable, and they were all on a forest theme. So this is something that's been scrapped, but there are elements of this that I really like that are going to get included in the new system, and that's some of the flavour text. No one's stupid enough to break into it, so the question is, what's broken out? So says the Grave Harvester. And there's all these little snippets of flavour that give an idea of what the world of Decline is like. So I'm going to reappropriate these into the rulebook and quest book. So that brought me on to the second iteration, which is almost where it is at the moment. So it's a gridded battle map, and I will have a booklet of all the different quests with their own unique maps, so I can have really unique maps appropriate to each quest. And I think you'll agree that the artwork is better in the new map. This looks very computer generated, and it was. This is a more natural kind of hand-drawn style, which I much prefer the aesthetics of. A problem with this that I found in recent playtesting was the grids. Great, you can move something along, 1, 2, 3, 4, but it gets fiddly, you miss the grid spaces, and there's an awful lot of counting. It's more admin, it's harder to play. So, I've changed things. But before I get to that, I've been calling it a 6mm game. I'm going to use 10mm miniatures. 10mm miniatures fit into the scale better, and they're easier to handle and move. Plus to which, I've made a discovery, which I'll come on to now. So this is the latest map. And I'm going to show you something cool. There's no grid, as you can see. I'm going to put on one of the characters. Check this out. It stays put, and that is because what I'll suggest that players do is get a little magnetic flex sheet. They're really cheap, they're about £3, to slide under the page of the booklet. Also, you can get these little 10mm, they're not magnetic, they're just steel discs. They're really cheap, in the order of 3p each from an online supplier, and they work perfectly, and they're self-adhesive as a base for a 10mm miniature. So that now doesn't lose its position. If you think before, not only did I have a grid and cards originally, but I also had these polyhedral dice, and they would knock things around. So the polyhedral dice have gone and have been replaced with a deck of cards, which I'll come on to in the 3rd section, the rules update. So if there's no grid, how is it that we're going to move? So I really went back to basics. I run Tabletop Upgrades, which is an online shop. I sell upgrades for miniatures games and board games. And one of my best sellers is little tabletop measuring widgets. So I thought, why not remove the grid and just use a little measuring widget? You could use a rule, you could use a tape measure. I think these little measuring widgets aesthetically look good, very satisfying to use. So If I wanted to move a distance of 3, I just move 3. If I wanted to check an engagement range, I just check it like that. If I want to see whether something's in range, I can find out very, very quickly, and it really brings the immediacy of the play that I always wanted. This last version that I've been working on has taken away a lot of the admin, the unnecessary maths of using the polyhedral dice, the amount of counting that you have to do, and replace that with an easy movement system which echoes war games, which I really like, and it feels much more natural. And also the maps, big improvement. So those are the physical changes, and I'm really happy with where the game is at the moment on that level, because I'm getting quite good at making these maps, and I can make them quickly, which means the story can progress much more quickly. So that conveniently brings us on to the second aspect that I want to talk about, which is the story update. So creative writing and storytelling is not something that I'm a natural at. I'm trained as an engineer, and I've got a very procedural way of thinking. So this has really broken me out of my comfort zone. So for those of you who don't know about the world of Decline, it's set in a magical world called Voland, and a once great civilization is fallen into ruin. And I've taken great inspiration from the Foundation series, Isaac Asimov, Buried Giant, Kazuo Ishiguro, and just generally the feeling of decay that is in the news at the moment. Everything seems to be taking a step backwards. Striation of society is getting larger. Some people are enormously wealthy, others can't feed themselves. So this game is designed to kind of echo some of those themes that we're seeing at the moment. So like I say, I'm not a natural storyteller. Perhaps my ambition is greater than the reality of what I'm capable of doing. So over the last couple of years, I've really been working on developing ways that help me to generate these stories. One of them is this World Builders Toolkit deck that I discussed last time, and basically by combining cards you can create interesting locations and ideas for quests. I've used that. That's something that I've created, and I'll be releasing that as a product because it's great for DMs and storytellers of any kind. But that's been really helpful, and I've also created scores, literally 30, 40 D100 tables that have helped me come up with ideas, and now I've got some really solid ideas of where the story's going thematically. So I'm just going to give you a few themes that will run throughout the game without giving too much away on the quests. So the people in Voland have gotten over-dependent on resources and are starting to fight this conflict within society for these limited resources. We've got failing infrastructure, and in the game throughout there's this theme of these ruined towers, once great sort of white elephants created by the government, worked as watchtowers, but they just can't afford to maintain them. And this idea partially is inspired by the ROC nuclear bunkers that are dotted around the United Kingdom, which were a hangover from the Cold War. They're all designed to exactly the same spec. Something I think I'll do a video on in the future, but these towers are throughout Voland and they've fallen into ruin. Next, we've got unequal wealth distribution and the problems that causes. Pollution and environmental failure, as the people have started to exploit the land for the limited resources. Bad things have started happening to the environment, and it's impacting on the people. In the game, you'll be trying to work to counter some of these effects. We've got corruption of officials, and in fact, in the very first quest, the Volondian Guard have basically raided your uncle's house. They've killed your uncle for not paying the taxes, bribes, and you've got to escape against the odds. So the first quest isn't a fighting quest, it's just an evasion, and there's a few little mini games in trying to uncover caches. I want this game, Decline, to have not just a combat facing gameplay. It's going to have puzzles and quests and ways that you have to use the environment to the best effect. Also, a recurring theme is rediscovering skills as ideas and technologies are lost in the kind of decline of society. This has come from an idea in one of the Foundation books, something really innocuous. They go to use this nuclear-powered lift, and the character says, "Oh no, that's out of action." So, "Well, why don't you fix it?" He's like, "Oh, we don't have the technicians anymore. In fact, I don't think it'll ever get working again." So just this gradual decay of knowledge in the society eventually has profound aspects. and people start going back to basics, and that's what happens in this game. And one of the things you'll be doing, which makes it unique, I think, you don't level up by a skill, you level up by making yourself better items. So that conveniently brings us on some of the new rules, and I'll start with the crafting and looting, because that gives me an opportunity to explain the cards. Here we have the Decline rulebook, the living rulebook. I'll be releasing this next week, along with a few maps and quests for you to try out. And thanks to the YouTube user, I think he's called Where's Our Outlaws, because he said, well, release it to the community, let us play it, let us give you some feedback. So thank you very much for that. I will certainly be doing that. So we have a bit of fluff, talk about the character stats, which I'll come back to, how characters are advanced, what happens on a player's turn, what happens on the enemy's turn, and here we have the gathering and looting. So each map will have access to different suits. So in this map, it's kind of a wilderness environment. There's probably fairly low level ores and minerals, plants and herbs, and basic loot. So we'll probably have three symbols, and I'll say that it's up to level 10. So if I choose to loot from my hand of 7 cards, I'll come onto the hand in a second, I'll discard a card as a cost, and then I'll flip off the top of the deck and get a King of Spades, which would have been Elemental Iron, not available. Discard another card to have another go at gathering. I get an 8 this time. I find some Mithril, and this carries on. 6, there's no rarities in this location, but you can see where I'm going. The suits allow greater variation, and it kind of nicely categorises effects. These suits are also used in kind of crits and critical hits and critical failures, in giving some extra flavour to the game. So that's given you an idea why I've chosen to use the cards, because it gives me access to suits. Also, thematically, it does some really clever things, I believe. So when you start the game or your activation, you'll have a hand of 7 cards. This hand represents your energy, your physical energy of what you can do during your turn. So when you are moving around the map, you get a free movement equal to your moving inches, typically 3. And obviously, if you want to move, it takes up energy. So if I wanted to move 7 inches, I'd have to discard my entire hand. If I just want to get a bit nearer an enemy so that I can attack it, you can pre-measure, I'm going to need to, 1 isn't enough, so I'm going to have to discard 2 cards. So there's a bit of tension and decision making. What am I going to discard here? Well, I'll get rid of the 2 rubbish ones. I don't need the suits for anything. So I'll just get rid of the 6 and the 7. And I'll move a further 2 inches into combat. Now, again, to make an attack takes energy. I'm going to be spending cards to do that. But in these kind of combat situations, I can choose what I'm going to commit. So I'm going to I really want to hit. So I'm going to commit a king, card value of 10. Now I'm going to flip a card. Oh, I flip a king as well, so I wasted my time. Okay, that's fine. So my total is 10 plus my agility of 3, agility being your ability to hit, got 13. This skeleton has an agility of 2. So it will flip 2 cards, choose the best one, king in this case. So 10 plus its agility of 2, it loses against my total. So I've hit it. Now it's the strength that I can attack on. This time I want to do a lot of damage. So I'm going to commit this to the total. Draw a card. Oh, it's a 1. So I obviously want this, but in order to use that, I need to discard a card to use it. So my total is 10 plus my strength of 3 against the skeleton's natural toughness of also 3. Just going to flip 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. Highest card 10. So 10 versus my attack of 13, I do 3 damage. So that gives you an idea of how that's going to work. Now, next week I'm going to do a full tutorial. I'm going to really think about the examples carefully and take you through the example scenarios that I'm putting out. But that hopefully gives you an idea of how the combat's going to work. It's hand management. It's choosing the right cards to play at the right time. I believe that any good game allows you to do many, many different things, but you don't have sufficient opportunities or resources to do all the things you want. So the tension and the decision making comes from making those critical and strategic choices. So as for the player movement, that's something I'll get into. The enemy movement, that's something I will get into in greater detail next week. But basically, in the enemy turn, the enemy will have some upkeep effects. It may be on fire, it may be poisoned. It will then move, and it will follow the movement instructions. It's almost got its like own little programming. So I've got a goblin that I've made here. So this goblin has this is its stat block. So if I kill it, I can loot it, and I can make 2 loot attempts, and I'm available to pick from these 2 tables. It's got a movement of 4, strength 2, toughness 2, agility 3, a health of 15. And health tracking, obviously, in this game is going to be a lot easier because I've got a magnetic sheet. So I'm just literally going to have some kind of scale on the side, and I'll be able to move and track the enemy health down the side. So that's going to be a lot easier. But the way that the AI, the automata, works is it's got these special rules. So most enemies will have Seeker. They'll use their movement to move the shortest route towards the player. Rambler means that it's going to be unaffected by any severe terrain like woodland or bogs. It's just going to be able to move through. Pack Tactics is going to be something that's a little bit more flavourful for a goblin. So they work better in groups. So for every goblin within 1 inch of it, it will gain +1 to its agility. If it's out of range of melee, it will try and shoot you with a short bow. And at the end of its movement, it will regroup. It says regroup 3. So it will make a movement of 3 inches towards the nearest goblin, and that's going to help them coalesce and be able to make use of that pack tactic ability. So that's going to give you an idea of where we're at there. So as you can see, a huge amount of progress. I'm really excited. It feels within grasping distance. I can see this being out in the public realm by mid-year. It's entirely possible. I'm really motivated to keep going at the moment, and your comments are a massive, massive help. So if there's anything that you've seen in this video that you like or don't like, please tell me. I read every comment and I take them really seriously. And it was the brilliant idea of the chap that I mentioned earlier, Where's Our Outlaws, that's led to me putting this out in the public domain at an early stage. So I listen to you, and I really love your feedback and encouragement. So thank you all. I'll see you next week, and I'll have some big news because we're putting the files out for you to try. So see you next time.